Welcome to A Dark Path, a podcast exploring the depths of witchcraft, magic, the occult, and all things mysterious. Join us on this journey into the unknown, down a dark path overgrown. Find spells and rituals, folklore and legends. Come, set your candles alight to clear your mind and unwind. Delve into the shadows to uncover a dark path. Today's episode comes with a trigger warning. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to A Dark Path, a podcast exploring the depths of witchcraft, magic, the occult, and all things mysterious. I'm Allyson Hemma-Romane, owner of Jupiter's Omens, and I love helping others take back their power.
I am Kristen Jackson, and I like to see the beauty in the dark.
And we're joined today by several strong women that I personally love and adore. Firstly, we have the fabulous Tabby back with us.
Hi, I'm Tabatha, owner of Phases of Life Crystals. I started my practice as a young adult, and as many have, I lost myself. But now I've came back, and after many lessons learned and lots of hard work, I've found my many passions and amazing women that I love.
And lastly, we have the wonderful Alex joining us from the Lilac Bat. Alex, will you tell us a little about your business and if you call yourself a witch?
My name is Alex. My small business is called the Lilac Bat. I mostly do t-shirts, hoodies, and stickers right now, and I'm enjoying moving into a more creative phase of my life. To answer your question, I don't think I've ever outright called myself a witch, but I definitely feel the tingle when I've heard it applied to me, if that makes sense. I'm very excited to be here and share this important conversation with you all.
Today's episode is going to be a heavy one. We will be talking about trauma and witchcraft, and I want to be frank, we will talk about abuse of varying kinds. This includes trauma related to child, physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, violence, drug abuse, and suicidality. Like I said, it's going to be heavy. We all understand that these topics of conversation can be too much or too triggering for some. If you don't feel comfortable, don't listen today. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more content that is not quite so heavy.
We know through psychology, each person's nervous system is unique in what experiences it can tolerate or not tolerate, which is why trauma research is so important. Different things affect different individuals to different degrees. There is no one-size-fits-all response that is helpful in the healing process. Rhythms, routines have both proven to be helpful to a large population of traumatized individuals. Additionally, the idea that something beyond ourselves is out there, that there's a higher power or order or way beyond humanity, has also been helpful. A meaningful career, life legacy, and religion are a few examples of systems offering homage to a higher power, but so does witchcraft. This is what today's episode is going to be about: witchcraft as a coping mechanism and method of empowerment for traumatized individuals. So without further ado, let's examine trauma and witchcraft.
My trauma, I grew up with an abusive father. I refer to him as my bio dad. He has never been my father. I was constantly told from a young age how worthless I was because I was a girl. I was told several times that I was supposed to be born a boy and that because I wasn't, I would not amount to much. When I did wrong, and sometimes for unknown reasons, I was beaten, sometimes with a belt, an open hand, or an object nearby. I have been handcuffed, hogtied, and left alone in a room, sometimes all of these at the same time. My bio dad has pointed loaded and cocked guns at myself, our animals, and even my stepmother while I was sitting right next to her. When I was eating something I didn't like, I was forced to eat it, even to the point of vomiting it up and eating it again. My mother was a perfectionist, and in being a perfectionist, she has very high expectations. She was also married to my bio dad. She too was abused. So she carries her own trauma and wounds on top of being a single mother of 2 kids. Since my mom was working to keep us clothed and fed, I grew up helping to raise my brother and trying to keep him from the abuse. So I had to grow up very quickly. I still struggle with this. I never really feel I got to be a kid, and I missed out on a lot. My suicidal thoughts started around the age of 8. My first attempt was at the age of 12, my last attempt at the age of 14. Between these ages, there were a total of 3 attempts, and my suicidal thoughts continued throughout my 20s. As an adult, I have been terrified of going places alone, meeting new people, and interacting with men. Trust has been difficult for me as I am unsure if or how I will be hurt. When I was 23, I had a gruesome car accident and it messed me up mentally for a super long time. Suicidal thoughts increased. I was constantly disassociating. My body was on autopilot. I would abuse over-the-counter medicine to help me sleep, and I had constant nightmares. This is when I started drinking heavily, partying. At one of these parties, I was choked for a light slap on the cheek when he had asked for it. Another, I was punched in the temple for kissing one of his friends. Two different people. Needless to say, this didn't help build my trust in men. I spent most of the next few years like this until I started dating a guy with a beautiful daughter. And this was a very short-term relationship, but he was straight edge, and being with him was really good for me. He was also Wiccan and had very similar beliefs as I do. He helped me to rediscover the craft, and I remember how much better I felt when I was practicing.
Thank you, Kristen, for that and sharing what sounded like a very hard childhood. I appreciate you are who you are, and I feel like it's made you a stronger woman. And I just want to say that I'm proud of you because what you've been through sounds very horrific. You made it and you're still here. So that's a win in my book. My mother had me at a young age of 16, and we lived with her abusive boyfriend. At the age of 4, I was feeding my infant brother and basically keeping him alive as best as I could for a 4-year-old until CPS got involved and my grandparents had taken over. I lived with them until about the age of 5 or 6. I don't remember when my mother met my stepfather and we became a family, but I'm sure it was probably a really difficult switch on both me and my brother. Growing up, my family didn't have a lot of things that others did. I lived in apartments that were considered the ghetto, or what the kids at school would call the ghetto. Bouncing between my mom and my paternal father's house. I wanted to live with him for most of my younger years because he lived on the quote nicer part of town, and I just felt better when I was there. All through my school years, I was made fun of for being poor. It was never really that my family didn't have money because my stepfather, who I don't like calling my stepfather now, this is just me saying it because I have to make sure you guys understand the step in the paternal father. He busted his ass to work, like to make money for the family, but instead of like buying the name brand clothes and the name brand stuff, we had doing like a lot of like experiences and time together. We also did a lot of local things like beach trips, camping, hiking, and rock hounding, which is where I found the love of crystals first. Fast forward a little bit to the 7th grade. I became the best backstroke on my swim team, and I beat lots of records. It was the first time I had actually been seen as somebody, and it felt really amazing to feel that way. But that kind of came to a halt when in the 8th grade, I became super sick. I found out I had diabetes, but before they had found that out, I was being asked if I was on drugs because I was like always super tired. They asked if I was starving myself, which was really fucking horrible to hear from your parents when you're trying to explain at, a young age, like, I don't feel good. Like, I just want to sleep. That was really hard for me, was not being believed by my parents. The day I became they found out I was a diabetic, I was rushed to the ER because my stepfather had found me barely conscious in my bed, and that when I was told I had type 1 diabetes. So I almost quit the swim team because I was scared to go low, meaning my blood sugar is dropping. They basically hammered it into my head that going low or going high was like a no-go and I was going to die. So at the age of 12 years old, I was like panicking. I became very sheltered by my mother at that time. I couldn't go to the movies, couldn't go to friends' house. I felt like at this time is kind of where my mom's power trip over me became known, kind of where it started. Obviously, being a mother is hard, and seeing your young daughter, I understand why she's that way. So there's no hard feelings now, but it was very hard on me as a child. Freshman year, I was sexually molested by someone in my extended family. I felt like that day, all my innocence and my trust had lost, not only to just men, but also to family. Because what affected me most about the situation wasn't the act itself, but it was the fact that I wasn't believed. And I was asked by a family member if I liked it. I had to sit through lots of family gatherings with the person who did it right in the room, trying to act like nothing happened, or having to keep it a secret was a big thing between me and the others that knew. It was like a no, like we couldn't talk about it. So this is like 6 years later. After having my son, I got diagnosed with chronic neuropathy. I was put on morphine, oxycodone, and Vicodin pretty much all at the same time. That spiraled out of control, as many people probably understand how drug addiction works. And it took over. The pills were no longer enough, and I switched to heroin. My son's dad found someone else, and we split. So the person who didn't make me an addict, but was there at the beginning of the journey, just up and abandoned me. So that was also really hard on me. I went to inpatient for 30 days. My ex filed a motion with a court date that I could not attend. And when that happened, I was coached by my mother to create a parenting plan. And it kind of all went to shit. In a nutshell, my ex won custody of our son. In the 30-day treatment, I also met my husband of now 8 years, but we've been together for 12. I immediately fell for him, and he convinced me to stay in treatment when I was in there because I wanted to leave. I didn't want to stay. And I remember him saying, 3 weeks is worth a lifetime with your son, but if you leave, you're going to risk losing him altogether. After losing custody of my son, I felt I lost the most important thing in my life. I contemplated suicide, relapse. My father and my mother, who I was living with at the time, actually told me, stop with your bullshit. You're using losing your son as an excuse to use again. That really was harsh to hear. She told me, don't be stupid, which now I look back on it and I was thinking stupidly. But in the moment when you just lost someone so precious to you, that is when my boyfriend at the time, now husband, said that I wasn't in a very healthy environment and asked me to come and live with him. At first I told him no. I thought that was a stupid idea, that I didn't want to leave my son. I wound up doing it anyway. The change of environment made me see a lot of things differently, such as family dynamics. And I had realized how I wanted to live my life. So I started changing within myself. I married a man who saved me from manipulation and toxic behavior. And we have 2 beautiful girls together now. And to this day, I still struggle with mom guilt over losing custody of my son. But I'm always working through it. And I'm not as hard as on myself anymore. I also have a lot of people who back me up when it comes to me feeling this way. I still have a lot of things that go wrong in my life, and co-parenting is one of the hardest things that I'm still working through. I love the alchemy of my life, though, how it's unfolded, the relationships that have changed, and the strong women who I've met in my life who make me feel better about my life. They remind me that everything is as it should be, and it all happened for a reason.
Thank you, Tabatha. I so appreciate you sharing your story. And I want to take a moment to thank all of you guys for your willingness to be vulnerable and share, not only with me and those of us here recording together, but to anybody who's listening. While we may not have had the same life experiences, I think that making space for each other is a huge act in growing community and helping our neighbors heal, which I know all of you guys have in your goals. And I know I have in mine. I can now recognize that trauma touched me early and often, but it took me a long time to realize that it actually was trauma. I have aphantasia, which is a lack of mental imagery. It's often accompanied by what's called a severely deficient autobiographical memory. Basically, if you're trying to picture an apple in your head, you might get a picture of a red apple with a brown stem, things like that. When you ask me to picture an apple, it's more like going through a filing cabinet and saying, okay, well, apples can be red, they can be green, they can be yellow. What kind of apple are we talking about? And I kind of have to do a little bit more research to get to that same place sometimes. For me, trying to remember things that happened in my own life can be incredibly difficult, because with that aphantasia comes a severely deficient autobiographical memory sometimes. I have spent a lot of my life relying heavily on how the people around me told stories, or how the people close to me relayed something that happened, which is a little bit problematic because that has somebody else's bias. And because of that, I learned that my own memory was not reliable from those closest to me. They always had a different recollection of events and typically deemed me as overly emotional or dramatic. And oddly, as I have been finding more of my healing, I'm finding my memory to be much better. A part of me wonders if I just dissociated a lot as a child and as a teenager and as an adult. And continuing problem. We're working on it. We're coasting out of it. In order to find my healing, I had to accept that I might not ever be able to access what hurt me or how it hurt me. Typically, when I relive a memory, it's purely somatic. I get shakes, I get stressed out. It's all in the body, but I'm not getting any of the memory up in my head. The overarching themes, though, in my life of trauma have included multiple undiagnosed health conditions. So, Tabby, when you were talking about having an undiagnosed health condition, I can really relate to that. I now am technically disabled and I have a need for mobility aids, and I probably needed them in high school. I was bullied harshly, family history of addiction, as well as very closely connected to people who have had addiction, sexual assault, neglect, and being a first-generation American were some of those things that touched me. Relationship trauma, which for me has been one of my more recent things that I've been working through. While it is probably one of the more difficult things that I've done, it is one of the most rewarding things as well, because with learning to love yourself, you're learning to love others as well. And I'm just really excited to share in this conversation and talk about what healing looked like for me with you today.
Alex, thank you so much for sharing your journey. We have a lot of similarities thematically, but I know your specific hurdles are hurdles that other people have. And I know in those communities, you oftentimes feel alienated and alone because it's not super common. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing what you're comfortable sharing. I think that you'll find that it's rewarding. I really appreciate your voice. I didn't realize that I was abused until getting my ACE, or Adverse Childhood Experiences score, of 5 out of 10 in 2021. And I didn't realize that I'd been physically abused or had complex PTSD until talking to a therapist in June 2024. Violence is the word I'd always use to describe things, partially because it didn't seem systematic with any one person, and partially because it didn't seem as serious as the stuff portrayed in the media. There was a lot of self-gaslighting and self-loathing through all of the things that happened to me, which came from not being able to talk about things and not getting answers, as well as societally imposed guilt and shame around the things that had happened with me and experiences, which did the most damage to my nervous system. At 7, I was repeatedly sexually assaulted by female classmates. My dad left without speaking to us for 6 months out of the blue. I was sexually assaulted again by a boy my age. I started having nightmares, started seeing figures, planned and prepped for my first suicide attempt, and then my parents officially divorced. My mom is and always has been a really safe place for me, but she was regularly hospitalized in special or critical care through my childhood and adolescence for complications with type 1 diabetes and various illnesses. When I was old enough, when my mom was hospitalized, I took care of my sister on my own. It was really hard watching my mom try her best to work and take care of herself and us while under the burden of stress of being a single mom with a really demanding job, to hear emergency medical staff and medical staff in the hospital, acquaintances, judge her for not trying harder to be healthy and be there for us, because she was. That was pretty traumatic and upsetting. Through body shaming and life with a narcissist, I learned my physical appearance and personality would never be good enough for anyone's standards. So my clothes were regularly disposed of, my hair was cut, my toys taken away, and I was occasionally slapped for undesirable behavior. These experiences paved the way for a number of emotionally volatile and manipulative, codependent and approval-seeking friendships and romantic relationships that all ended very badly. I was made to witness self-harm. My life was threatened on several occasions, and I caused a lot of heartbreak in my life thus far. This is because I tend to people please out of fear of being physically or sexually harmed. I stay in relationships that are toxic for myself out of love, altruism, fear of abandonment, and dependency. I just didn't take the time to figure out who I was, what I needed, and what I wanted, which are kind of vital information to have before going into any relationship. A lifelong addiction to suicidal thoughts has carried me through so much physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. My first plan was at 7 and occurred at least twice a year, especially around the holidays, through January 2024. When in crisis or depressed, the adrenaline and endorphin rush of planning and going through the motions of setting up a suicide plan was an easy way for me to get an immediate chemical fix in my brain, much like a drug addict or using a substance to null emotions or even emotional eating. Suicidal ideation is something that I still live with. I recognize that it's an unhealthy coping mechanism that occasionally gets me through hard times. And I'm always trying to keep ahead of it with medication and talk therapy.
Allyson, thank you so much for talking about your experiences. I'm so glad that you're strong enough to continually work on yourself. And I know I would be remiss not to acknowledge all of us here and thank all of you for being so strong and so willing to share some of the hardest moments in our lives. And hopefully that was very cathartic for everyone. That is just the beginning of the journey. We must continue down the path towards healing. First, we'll take a break to catch our breaths and calm our minds.
We've been traveling together down a dark path. Now it's time to take a break and listen to some of our sponsors. A Dark Path will return after these messages.
Light the way on your dark path with Wise Wolf Craft's unique selection of tools for living with intention. From manifestation kits to altar items and divination tools, we have everything you need to connect with your inner wisdom. Wise Wolf Craft offers Reiki and other energy healing sessions, divination readings, and a variety of classes on topics like intuitive tarot and personalized spell work. Unleash the power within. Visit Wise Wolf Craft today online at wisewolfcraft.com and on Facebook and Instagram as @WiseWolfCraft. Wise Wolf Craft, tools for living with intention.
Now that we have a background understanding, let's talk about how witchcraft correlates to trauma and helps wounded nervous systems. Through ritual, grounding, and awareness practices like ceremonies, spell work, meditation, and breath work, nervous systems are reminded to focus on being in the present moment. This includes practices used in the medical system today, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, somatic therapy, bilateral movement, and EMDR, noticing breath work, the 5-4-3-2-1 presence exercise, as well as meditation, tapping, affirmations, and journaling, just to name a few. Routine by ways of a daily practice, but also close work with the cycles of time, such as night into day, the monthly cycle of the moon, the changing of seasons, and planetary body traveling. This gives things to look forward to and also helps nervous systems feel connected to something greater, a bigger routine and rhythm than their own reality. Celebrating routines and cycles through ritual also reminds us to be grateful, which can also bolster mental health. The biggest reason I personally think traumatized nervous systems are drawn to witchcraft is empowerment.
Now that we know more about how witchcraft helps wounded nervous systems, we can follow our personal path towards healing. A few ways that I have been able to facilitate my healing journey have been by practicing my craft and incorporating it into my clinical healing journey, pairing therapy and medication with mindfulness and meditation. Witchcraft has helped me to take better care of myself, helped me to build my confidence, helped me to understand me, given me ways to cleanse myself with things like wash away showers, shake it off or pull away methods of cleansing. It has given me back my control and helped me to make decisions. How has it helped you guys on your healing journeys?
Kristen, I liked the way you called it the wash away shower because I actually started doing that years ago when I hadn't even fully gotten back into my practice. When you called it the wash away shower, I was like, that's a perfect name. One way witchcraft has helped me get into my healing journey is it's brought me back to self. And when I think of bringing me back to self, it's bringing me back to routines and rituals in ways I've done that. Like you said, wash away showers. If I can't take baths, I love the wash away showers. Breath work is a huge one for me. Also, grounding. I ground on a daily basis.
Witchcraft has helped me on my healing journey in that I feel like it has given me the power of intention. I have realized how much power I hold inside me and how much I can kind of imbue on the things around me, just in what I cook, what I create, what I touch. I'd have to agree with what Allyson said, giving empowerment to people. For me, The way I chased that was I kind of started chasing down my family history a little bit. So both my parents are from Iceland. I kind of went and started chasing down Norse paganism, looking down that route. And that helped me, that guided me to grounding techniques such as, I think it's called earthing. I just call it walking barefoot. I like to go outside barefoot. Rain, snow, sun, I don't care. I will walk barefoot. I also started doing rune casting after looking into my Icelandic ancestry, which for me, as somebody who doesn't have a lot of mental imagery, I find rune casting to be nice and tactile. I like being able to touch and hear that, so it's a multisensory experience for me, which is also very grounding because then I have to stop and listen.
The biggest way that witchcraft has helped me on my healing journey is empowerment, kind of like Alex was saying. But the first way, which I would say was more important, was bringing me back into my body, kind of like what Tabby was saying, or that return to self. The way that I started was ritual baths. I just intuitively enjoy taking bubble baths before I knew I was a witch. And once I started getting into woo-woo stuff, aka I had a therapist tell me to get some rose quartz, I was like totally hooked. And I was making ritual baths for myself with herb blends to help chill my energy. It made such a huge difference. So then I started doing smoke cleansing. At first with sage, but subsequently I've switched to rosemary, and that's been really good for maintenance. It helped me in doing those two things and feeling better, built up my intuition and self-confidence that I felt more empowered to take control of my life. And this, again, was through the success of smoke cleansing and ritual baths, but then also different spell work and manifestation things. Also, shadow work has been a huge thing in my healing journey, specifically through witchcraft, in that it's focused thematic reflection used with astrology and moon phases. Because it's helped me so much, I've incorporated it in my business.
Do you have to fully believe in witchcraft and magic in order to use it as a tool on your trauma integration journey?
No, I don't think so. I think that a lot of people use witchcraft without knowing that it's witchcraft. Like, I mean, we could give countless examples, and that's going to be another episode, I think. I'll just leave it at that. I think a lot of people use witchcraft and not without realizing that it's witchcraft, and you don't have to believe in witchcraft or magic in order to utilize it or have success.
I'd have to agree with you on that one, Allison. I think that for a lot of people, actually reaching out to simple things like bath salts, ritual baths, tarot, runes, things like that can all be little gateway to witchcraft through your healing journey.
I do not think that you have to believe in witchcraft in order to use the tools. Your healing journey is your healing journey. You can believe in nothing and still be able to heal from trauma. And it is work every day to heal from trauma. However, having additional tools in your belt is always beneficial. And witchcraft gives you the ability to learn more about yourself, and the tools can help you to focus whatever your intention is.
I completely agree with what you guys said. I think witchcraft is practiced almost every day. I mean, there are people who just collect like little rocks, just like little pebbles. They don't even have to be crystals, but just little pebbles. And then they believe in something that has to do, or they connect with a feeling that has to do with that certain pebble. And then they keep it, and they don't really realize that they are creating their own little magic out of that one tiny little pebble. Same with gardening. I know a lot of people who say that that it's not part of like a practice, or it's not a ritual for them, or anything, but they garden barefoot. They don't know why they feel that connection when they garden barefoot, but they love it. And so they do it. That's practice. That's witchcraft. I don't think you have to fully believe in magic to know, because I feel like magic is what you make it.
How has witchcraft helped you to feel empowered or to have more agency? Within witchcraft, I have explored the power of the divine feminine even before I knew what that term was. It really helped me to gain confidence in the traits that I was reinforced to see as ugly or improper or not what I should do. I've become more connected to my body and understanding of my mind, and it gives me the tools to heal myself and then to continue and to heal others.
I think a way that witchcraft has helped empowered me is being a child who didn't come from a family with a lot of money. As a child, I always envisioned having those things that everyone else envisioned. But now that I've met other women who I like to call are in their bucket stage. It's like you can create your own look, you can create your own personality and be who you want to be. Like, who cares what people think about you? And I've learned that through witchcraft.
For me, how has witchcraft helped me feel empowered? It's helped to rewrite, or rather unwrite, all of this conditioning I've had that my ideas were stupid, that my logic didn't make any sense, that somebody else always knew better than me. In following my intuition and having successes in witchcraft, having successes in spell work, I learned that I could trust myself, that those conditioning patterns that I had agreed to weren't actually right. And that for me, I was right. And those things can exist at the same time, right? What's right for somebody else isn't right necessarily for someone else. So letting me tap into myself and get back to truth for me was so empowering. And then having the confidence came later.
I liked what you guys said, and I really liked how you touched on the divine feminine and how each one of you kind of talked about bringing power back into yourself, bringing power back into the femininity. So one of the books I really enjoy is Women Who Run with Wolves. I'm sure many of you guys have read it. Fabulous, but it talks a lot about damaged intuition. And I think that through witchcraft and through empowerment, it really does help heal that intuition, like you said, Allyson, rewriting those pathways and learning to trust yourself again, because so often those of us who are assigned female at birth are taken very lightly, aren't we? Nobody takes us seriously. So feminine agency is huge.
How has magical ritual and routine helped us on our journeys?
I haven't necessarily found that ritual and routine has been helpful to me. I'm pretty non-committal and I don't necessarily like to commit to even routine. I would rather have a lot of like fast and loose spontaneity, and my magic practice really reflects that. Yeah, there are a few things that I do every day or generally every day, but I don't really think about it. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like, I don't know, it's not a conscious ritual or routine. When I'm sitting down to do ritual spell work or spell work in general, I do tend to follow cycles, and that has been very helpful. So our cycles, routines, I don't know, but I found that doing cycle work gave me things to look forward to, if that makes sense. Like I could make plans and look forward to things, give me reasons to be excited to wake up the next day, something that I could constantly be working towards. That has helped me more so than necessarily ritual and routine, unless we're counting the cycles of the moon and the cycle of the year as a routine.
I feel like it is because it's very like it follows a pattern and you do certain things on new moons that you don't do on full moons or that might be a little bit different midway through. So
Thanks for that.
I feel it does.
I kind of think like Allyson thinks. I think that's the only thing that stays in place when it comes to my practice with the ritual and routines. But everyone's life is ever changing, right? You never know if your week is always going to be different the next week. So it's really hard for me. I don't know if I can speak for everyone else, but it's hard for me to be able to continue doing a ritual every day. I may wake up the next day and just be like, my child last night was needing my attention a lot. So today I'm going to.
For me, I am a little bit neurospicy. I need reminders to do things the right way. I need reminders of when to do things. So for me, I am a routine person, but only out of necessity. So I will set myself alarms. I will set myself calendar reminders for when I want to perform certain things or when I want to, throw out a certain intention to the world. And I am also very ritualistic I am very much the person who throws a lot of herbs in my cooking. And I'm going to throw intentions in with those herbs. And I find that to be a little ritualistic because I'm using the same herbs for the same reasons over and over again because I like the results and I feel like my intention is being baked into my food. I would say that's a little bit ritualistic, and the spicy brain likes reminders. So if I don't remind myself, it doesn't happen. And then my practice, I feel like it doesn't necessarily waver, but for me, it's a reminder to be present, I suppose, in the cycle, in the moment, in whatever I'm trying to do at that time.
What's a better reminder than food? Come on, like what a good trigger event. Like, oh, I'm hungry, I should do this ritual.
That's such a good idea though. But like we literally are kind of comes back to like, are we knowledgeable of the fact that we're using witchcraft. Herbal remedy is a form of witchcraft. I think that some people are really great at setting rituals and setting routines. Some days I'll just be like, I want to light an incense, and that's all I do. Some days I sit down and I've got the bath going, I've got candles lit, I've got Palo Santo burning, I've got it's like a production. Most often for me, it's just kind of like, what do I have the capacity for? And then what do I have the time for? When I do have those magical rituals, they do help me to learn different ways of giving myself protection and giving myself strength and noticing the difference between my energy, source's energy, other people's energy. And it also, like Allyson said, it gives me something to look forward to. Sometimes I'm like having a stressful day and I'm like, all I can think about is I'm going to jump in that bathtub. I'm going to throw some Epsom salts. I've got my Love My Body, bath bomb, whatever it is. And that's so exciting. And why not look forward to the exciting parts of the day?
Disclaimer, Kristen and I are both Taurans, so we really like luxurious
I want to be
luxurious
comfortable.
events.
I want to
And a
be in a bath with my favorite food, chocolate milk, and some good smells.
Have you eaten, okay, side note, have you eaten dinner in the bathtub before?
Not dinner, but snacks. I've
No.
definitely had a lot of snacks.
Dude, it'll take you to a new plane of existence. My favorite is Chinese food. Chinese food in the bathtub. I will fight on this hill. Right? Like, there's nothing better than Chinese food in the bathtub with like the lights down and like candles going and like your favorite music. Like it is.
Oh my gosh.
It is such a vibe.
What is that called? Like girl dinner? Like where it's
Girl
just like
dinner.
Yes, that's what I've done.
Another good option for bathtub girl dinner would be like wine and mozzarella sticks.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Tangent
Where
over.
are we?
I just really needed to talk about food in the bathtub. It's like a
If
moral.
that gets cut, I'm gonna be so upset. Like I will die on this hill, damn it!
We've been traveling together down a dark path. Now it's time to take a break and listen to some of our sponsors. A Dark Path will return after these messages.
Light the way on your dark path with Wise Wolfcraft's unique selection of tools for living with intention. From manifestation kits to altar items and divination tools, we have everything you need to connect with your inner wisdom. Wise Wolfcraft offers Reiki and other energy healing sessions, divination readings, and a variety of classes on topics like intuitive tarot and personalized spell work. Unleash the power within. Visit Wise Wolfcraft today online at wisewolfcraft.com and on Facebook and Instagram as @WiseWolfcraft. Wise Wolfcraft, tools for living with intention.
What grounding and centering practice has helped you the most? For me, it's been tapping to get me to feel presence, right? But then also somehow it's also centering. I say somehow. Kristen and I are actually Reiki students right now, and we know the answer. It's because it's on meridians in your body. So when you're tapping on those meridians, it helps center you. But I use tapping to like come back into my body, which to me is grounding. Another way is just sitting on the freaking ground and like doing grounding exercises, like meditations, right? Imagining roots, imagining melting into the earth, things like that. I do mostly ground in water though, and I tell people that it's because I have a water moon and a water rising sign, so I have to water those water signs. But I really like to do grounding and cleansing showers at the same time, grounding and cleansing baths. So those are kind of my go-tos.
I'm
Who's
gonna have to
next?
second you on the tapping. I'm definitely a big tapper. As somebody who struggles with guided meditation, or even when I first started trying to meditate, I would watch YouTube videos or listen to audio, and it would ask me to imagine things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, fuck, can't do that. So for me, tapping became a much more accessible way to recognize that I am in my physical form. I am in my body. This is where I'm existing. All this shit spiraling up in my head is not, it affects me, but it's not my physical self.
I would have to agree with Allison with the grounding in the showers. Like I said earlier, I actually started doing that randomly where I would just put my entire head and body underneath the shower. And it was like following the water droplets from one point of the top of my head all the way down to the bottom. I never saw that as grounding, but I am also a person where if I'm feeling stressed or I'm anxious or just I'm like, my mind is racing, I go outside and I just barefoot grass, literally earth myself. That has become an everyday practice in my house. And I like meditating with stones. And I usually match the stones to the chakras that I'm working on.
I personally really struggle with grounding. For me, it's always been taking baths. That's the easiest way to calm down my senses. I have sensory processing issues. So the water helps me to be able to not feel anything and I can just be. It helps me to relax my mind. Plus, the warmth of the water, the sense of the essential oils, the relaxing feeling that you have afterwards, adding herbs to it, like it just there's that Taurus again. It just heightens all the senses. It just makes you feel so cozy. So that's kind of my best way is kind of meditating and grounding in the bathtub.
Oh, so cozy.
Oh, so cozy.
What mindfulness practices and spells have you tried that didn't work to cure your depression, quote unquote, or PTSD or anxiety? And how did you rebound using witchcraft? So I haven't ever outright tried to like banish or cure depression, PTSD, or anxiety. I do have all three of those. I've just kind of been focused on integrating. So for me, I'm not looking to ditch those things because I think they're a big part of me, what makes me me, and I don't necessarily want to lose them, but I want them to be better managed. So if I'm doing spell work for healing, I'm looking at like integration. There are times where I haven't been as integrated as I wanted to, or I've failed seemingly to process through some things and I'll get re-triggered or re-traumatized, but that's not a failure either. I really just would kind of focus on repeating things if I felt necessary. It's like I didn't ever see them as failures. I just saw it as needing to do more. So I would just repeat a cleansing exercise or repeat a grounding exercise if I wasn't feeling calmer. So just kind of keep at it instead of giving up and walking away, right? So using those methods of showering, bathing, sending things into the ground, and tapping are kind of my biggest resources, especially freshly post mental health crisis.
I feel like you said everything that I wanted to say because I feel very similar to that in that, like, I don't feel like I ever necessarily had this anything I felt like was a failure. And if I didn't feel like it was a failure, it was just a learning experience. My kids are in sports and I repeat this day in and day out. We learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. So I try not to view anything that doesn't necessarily work out the way I intended it to as a failure and more as a, if it failed and it went another direction, let's investigate either why and try to get things back on track. Or do I chase down this new direction? Because maybe this new direction was what was intended for me. Maybe I didn't know what was right and this is where I needed to go.
I think it's because we tend to let our egos get in the way with spell work. And so much of healing work is relinquishing your ego and letting go of control, not necessarily having a desired outcome. And I think that's the attitude that you and I at least have really had in spell work dealing with trauma, which is why we've not had a quote unquote failure, right? Is because we're kind of surrendering and saying, do what's best for me, do what's in alignment with my growth, do what's best for my higher self and my healing journey.
I have to agree with both of you guys. I think out of the three, depression and PTSD and anxiety, I would say that anxiety is my biggest thing. When something doesn't go my way, just like you guys, I don't see it as a failure. To me, I see it as in divine time. So when I set an intention, I've learned, you set the intention and you do your spell work or even your shadow work, and it's a waiting game. It's not necessarily like, oh, this didn't happen in a month, it failed. It will happen when it's supposed to happen. But I do believe in repeating spells. But in the meantime, I'm working on me and how I can do for myself in the waiting period.
Like, that doesn't mean don't do the thing. That doesn't mean don't work towards the goal, but sometimes it just takes a little longer to get there, especially if it's something that needs to have like certain pieces have to fit into place before that thing can happen. And sometimes we as humans were like, but I want it yesterday. Young me did a lot of different meditations and spells regarding my family, how my family interacted, and just to kind of like find ways to make things better. So there was this one time I waited until everybody was asleep. My mom and my brother were asleep, and I wanted to do a spell to soften my family's words so that way we can kind of communicate better and like speak nicer to each other. Collected my candles, I got some herbs, I made a little salt circle. I had very minimal ingredients because I didn't want a bunch of smell, I didn't want a bunch of smoke, I didn't want to be found out. Super in the closet. I wrote out my intention, I started meditating, and in walks my brother. I mean, this is like 11 o'clock midnight, I believe. I'm like, you're 9 years old. What are you doing out of bed? Like, what the heck? So he's just standing there and he just squeaks out, what are you doing? And I'm like completely shook and literally didn't want to get caught. I was frightened that I would get like caught and like my family would know and witchcraft is the devil and you're going to hell and more trauma. So I literally just replied, oh, I'm meditating. And he was like, okay, and went to bed. Luckily, nothing bad came out of that personal experience. Nothing good came out of it either. Like, literally nothing happened. For this particular spell to rebound, I literally just journaled about the experience, what had happened, what I noticed in like the days and weeks following. And then once I had a moment where I could actually truly be alone, I did it again. But this time I did the spell again and I did it more focused on me and my words, not my family. Since I was alone, I used more tools. I had an incense. I had more like I could actually burn the piece of paper and send it off into the universe. There's just so much more that I could do. And it ended up, it was successful. I definitely had some time where I felt like I paused more before I said things. If I were to do it again, I'd probably repeat it a little bit more often so that it kind of almost like refreshes it, and brings it back up to like the forefront of my brain as well as back into the universe and things like that. A few of us have touched on it. Just keep going. If one thing's not working, try something else, but it's worth it to put in that time to heal.
Before we close out the episode, let's quickly share our favorite mental health and spiritual healing resources.
I have found the book that I mentioned earlier, Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, PhD, to be extremely helpful. It's basically a look at particularly how women are looked at through society. So it might be more relevant to somebody who identifies as female or was assigned female at birth. But it's a great book for anybody. And then the second book that I wanted to mention was The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, MD. That book is currently, at the time of this recording, on Spotify Premium, so you can listen to it. It is a fantastic read. I do want to preface that it can be extremely triggering. Both of these books are a little bit textbooky, but they are worth the time and investment. Take your time to just kind of comb through them.
Two books that I would say, there's a book called The Inner Work, and it's kind of actually like a workbook, and you can fill it out as you go, by Matthew Micheletti and Ashley Cottrell. And then I want to recommend All the Agreement books by Don Miguel Ruiz. I love the look on life that he has.
The Power of Now was a huge book for me by Eckhart Tolle. Also, Wintering, I don't have the name of the author written down, but it's a book on how we all go through periods where we need rest. We oftentimes guilt and shame ourselves because our society is one that favors productivity and it's just super unhealthy. So that's a great read. First We Make the Beast Beautiful is also about dealing with PTSD and depression. She has another book that's talking about anxiety. So find that author and check out her stuff. It's very poetic and beautiful. Also, Set Boundaries. Find Peace. It's a book that's written by a doctor. Again, I don't have the name of the author on me because I just grabbed titles. That's also a very good book. It talks about why we fail having boundaries, why we might not have boundaries. It also talks about why we would struggle to enforce boundaries, Very educational. Again, another book where you read a little bit and you go, ah, and you have to close it and like process that and then move forward. Heal the Witch Wound is a wonderful book about how the witch wound affects us even when we don't necessarily realize that it is, and how it holds us back from moving forward in our lives. It's also full of journaling, shadow work, and reflections that you can do at your own pace on your own time. I also have references that are not books for anyone who's looking for digital inspo and healing. Your ACE score. I recommend doing this test if you're in therapy and can talk about it, because if you have an ACE score above 0, it can be triggering, like to find that number out. And if you're feeling like, oh, maybe I should take it, you probably do. So I would really, really, really strongly recommend that you are seeing a medical professional already so that you can talk about these things. Also, Mystic Healing with Allie. I talk about her a lot too. She is based out of California and does Reiki healing. Her Instagram page is so inspiring to me. She talks about wellness and mental health and offers memes about both of those things, dealing with witchcraft. It's just a lighthearted way to grow.
Just listening to you guys, there's so many different books, authors, websites, program, like there's so many things that people can do, and not everything is going to be great for everyone, but there's a lot of things that you can also reach out to. I will always hit on the body keep score. I really clung to a lot of different personality tests, doing like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs test. They helped me to learn more about like myself, what my personality is. With my trauma, I couldn't tell you what my favorite thing was. I had no idea what my favorite book, my favorite movie. I had to learn a lot of that in my 20s, getting to know myself and having these things like the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, or even just knowing my astrology chart. So knowing more about myself was really, really important. One book that I will probably to the day that I die, I think this book needs to be in every single high school. However, I cannot pronounce the author's name. So it's called The Strange Life of Ivan Osikin. I will butcher this, but I believe the author's name is Piotr Opensky, but it's kind of based off of Nietzsche's theories, and it is an amazing book. I don't want to tell you too much about it. It's a man that gets a chance to relive his life. Highly recommend it. Helped me out a lot. Even though it is technically a work of fiction, it does bring into account a lot of theories and science as well. Know yourself. Find ways to figure out that. To wrap this episode up, my main takeaway about trauma and witchcraft is continue. Continue healing, continue moving forward, take whatever steps that are healthy and that will push you towards your goal. Take time when you're feeling down to go through it, because you can't just have the ups, the downs are going to come no matter what. It's just making sure that you have those tools in your little pocket to help you when you need them.
I love what you said about making sure to like take time for yourself. And when your body is telling you that you need rest, I think it's very important to rest. My takeaway about trauma and witchcraft is when you've had a traumatic background, the main thing that you look for is finding yourself. And that's empowering. So to me, witchcraft equals empowerment, and it brings you back to yourself and not your trauma.
Strong second on that one. I think that empowerment as well as intention are some of the biggest things, biggest tools that you can put and work through in witchcraft and in your trauma healing journey. If you're not good at, or if you don't feel like you're good at finding those things for yourself, there's been a lot of great resources listed in the podcast, and I'm sure that if you reached out to any of the lovely hosts of this podcast, they'd have more information for you.
My takeaway is that for each of the symptoms of a major mental health crisis, there is a direct response in witchcraft to help you feel like you're in more control of yourself. And it's not necessarily that you have to turn to witchcraft, right? If you're into like spiritual wellness, you can do that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be witchcraft, quote unquote. It can be like new age or, whatever label you want to call it. Or you could not label it at all and just say, oh, sometimes I meditate. Sometimes I go outside and I practice earthing and grounding, and I like to go swimming. And right, like you don't have to label anything. There is a direct response to everything that you're feeling in witchcraft. And it's a great preloaded toolkit for those that are looking for something easy that they can turn to. That's my main takeaway. having a practice or at least having awareness of it before things get that bad, when you're on the way to something that bad or swimming in it, you have a toolkit you can just open up and say, okay, I haven't tried this thing yet. I'll go try that thing, and then make notes.
For anyone who needs help or is in crisis, there are options available for you. Please talk to your doctor. You can get a referral to a behavioral health specialist if you've been wondering or thinking about it. Just remember that the world needs your magic. Call or text 988 for the National Crisis Line. They can help individuals in mental crisis or with suicidal thoughts. There's also 988lifeline.org. Call 911 for any life-threatening emergencies, whether it's self-induced or outside. For child abuse and child neglect, call the statewide hotline at 1-866-363-4276. That's 1-866-END-HARM. To Write Love on Her Arms is dedicated to presenting hope and finding help for people struggling with depression, addiction, self-injury, and suicide. Find them at twloha.com. The Trevor Project is on a mission to end suicide among LGBTQ+ young. You can find them at thetrevorproject.org. For anyone who knows someone that may be struggling, the best thing you can do is just to be a listener. Let them know that you believe them, ask them questions, tell them that you care, and just be there for them.
Next episode is going to be a lot lighter in subject matter, kind of a huge tonal shift, actually, and we will offer some of our favorite books that have helped us along our witchy journeys. But for now, Tab, is there anything else you'd like to say about Phases of Life crystals?
I am Tabatha Benvenuti with Phases of Life Crystals. I have a crystal for every vibe or phase in your life. I do live crystal sales on Instagram. I also do markets and pop-up shops here in Arlington, Washington. So if you're local, you can find me. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Tabby. Alex, it was also so lovely to have you on today's episode. Is there anything you would like to share with our listeners about your business, the Lilac Bat?
Again, yes, thank you guys so much for having me. My name is Alex, and I am constantly coming out with new things, trying to work on custom work. Yeah, just check me out. I'm always coming out with something new and different and weird. I'm currently working on a Disability Pride Month line, so check it out.
Thank you for joining us today, Alex and Tabby. It's been amazing just to have you both. It's just great to hear everybody's different sides. And even though we're all from different walks of life and have had different traumas, it's just really good to hear that there are ways to overcome and to better yourself. Thank you so much, listeners, for coming along this journey with us. Please check out Tabatha on socials at Phases of Life Crystals, and Alex at the Lilac Bat on Facebook and at the Lilac Bat Goods on Instagram. Thank you so much. And then Allyson, of course, thank you too. So I just appreciate having these strong and wonderful women that are willing to share a glimpse, a little tidbit into our trauma and healing journeys.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Dark Path Podcast. Thank you for listening, and join us next time on A Dark Path.
It is now that our time together must come to an end. Thank you for joining us on this journey, a dark path come to a bend. Find us here bi-monthly on your favorite place to stream, and follow us on social media for news in between. A dark path is there, winding and waiting ever. May you craft peace, knowledge, and alignment, so shall it be, or something better.